Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, welcome back, my friend. This is part 2 of the episode that we put out on Tuesday. We are talking through the 17 things. 17 things that made the 2025 college football season unique,
yes,
and special, and one that we're always going to talk about and remember. Dan Rubenstein, we did 7 in part 1. Today, we got to knock out the remaining 10.
I'm ready to roll. This is our own personal 17 again. Shout out Zac Efron, not a friend of the show. Could be. We're open to it. We're open to Efron. A lot of great ones from part 1, and it actually made me think after we did the episode, I actually figured out that I had more of an appreciation for the season, despite my favorite team being bludgeoned in front of America by the eventual national champion once again. There is something nice about, there's player movement, but players seem to be, especially some of the quarterbacks, we saw another year of Diego Pavia, right? So we've gotten back to a place somewhat of having familiar faces longer in the sport, and you can build a conversation around a lot of these names longer. Like Dante Moore's coming back, and a lot of that obviously has to do with the financial calculus that they can I can come back, perhaps improve my draft stock, improve as a player, whatever, and make some money. Coaches are leaving. Head coaches seem to be leaving less often, despite our number one topic from part 1 and Lane Kiffin leaving from Ole Miss to LA. Curt Cignetti, I guess, had plenty of opportunities if he wanted to leave Indiana and take the Florida job or the Penn State job or whatever. And there is something nice, despite all this chaos with nobody being in charge. As I look back to recent nostalgia of 2025, it is kind of cool that we can point to certain players and situations across this sport and say, all right, let's see how this familiar thing evolves in 2026. Whereas the last few years, it hasn't always been like that. So I appreciate that.
I do too. I mean, the game has changed a great deal. There has been stuff going on even since we recorded the last episode with respect to the Big Ten schedule, with respect to the playoff system, with respect to Darian Mensah and Miami. We will get to all of those topics next week, perhaps. But for now, to your point, let's bask in the glow that was the 2025 season. Let's talk through the remaining 10 things that we thought made it special. We had a bunch of people send other stuff in as well. It seems as though this one definitely hit a nerve. So excited about that. Thank you for being with us. If you want to be with us all throughout the course of the offseason, please head on out to verballers.com. That is our Patreon, where you can go and sign up to help support the team. Otherwise, you can just hit follow or subscribe wherever it is you get this episode, be it on audio in the podcast form or in video form out on YouTube. Whatever does it for you, hit the follow, hit the subscribe button so that you do not miss any of our episodes. And last but certainly not least, head on out to quickslants.solidverbal.com. That's our newsletter. Quickslants.solidverbal.com. Go and check it out. That is where we send out regular dispatches, what's going on here in the Verballerhood, what's going on in and around the world of college football.
I've got a soft pitch for a newsletter topic that I haven't even, or an ongoing newsletter segment that I haven't pitched you off air privately. I don't know if I'll do it at the end of this episode or I'll just do it once the episode is done. But I do have something, at least for the off season, that usually these fingers don't work anymore, Ty. I think I might find I might even find a new keyboard to start typing on. I'm so excited
trying to wet the beak again. I like
a little bit.
I like it. All right. Well, look, where we left off was me picking Lee Corso. I've got the notepad in front of me.
Yes.
We had Lane Kiffin, Indiana, the tailspin of Clemson, Penn State, and Texas / Arch Manning.
Yeah.
The Bill Belichick saga, 2 G5 teams making the playoff, Alabama season, and Lee Corso. Those are the 7 items. You are up first, my friend. Let's talk through what made 2025 special and unique.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so I'm going to go with the entire Miami experience. I thought there was
okay.
something, and look, we have like Malachi Toney emerging, and we have, Miami breaking through as a playoff team, and we have the Carson Beck low lights and highlights, right? With his legs winning the Ole Miss game at the end, and obviously with his arm, losing, or not losing, but, throwing interceptions in key moments. I think the final number was like 4 of Carson Beck's 6 college losses ended with him throwing an interception trying to drive to win the game. Is that, I think that's what the stat or the line was. There is something about the oddity that was Miami's season, right? With what they were trying to do, which was just mash up everybody on offense. What was the breakthrough? Malachi Toney, a guy who basically reclassified and became a Swiss Army knife for this offense that took it up a notch with a new quarterback, with a second-year coordinator, whatever. And Mario Cristobal losing the smaller games, winning the bigger games until the final game. I don't know. The drought has been so long for Miami. To see them break through and shine on the national stage, I think is something that, like, when you look at the 2025 season as a whole, that Miami was involved in the rankings mess with Notre Dame and Alabama, that Miami had these absurd defensive ends and this giant offensive line and this huge quarterback name. I don't know. There is something, a first-year defensive coordinator who turned out to be an absolute stud in Corey Heatherman, the weirdness of the game against Texas A&M, beating the national champ. I just sort of, as excellent as Indiana clearly was, I felt almost as if the narrative of the season kind of ran through Coral Gables more than any other team.
Yeah, and the interesting, I guess, point of contrast when you look at Miami versus Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana didn't have the history of being a successful football program, not by a long shot.
Right.
But Miami did. Miami was there in the thick of it as you and I were growing up and becoming college football fans, and they were just a mainstay. And the fact that they were so far removed from that for, let's say, the last 20 years,
yeah,
basically, it always felt like there was something missing from the college football experience. Again, as a child of the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Not having Miami as part of those big discussions at the end of the season was a different feel to it. And though I'm not a Miami fan, and though I would have preferred Notre Dame beat Miami for obvious reasons, having Miami back in the throes of it all was damn cool. I really enjoyed that. I thought you were going to mention Michael Irvin.
You take your pick, right? There's the
and his
Miami
antics on the sidelines.
The corkboard, the Miami Hurricane 2025 into 2026 corkboard was absolutely filled up with interesting nuggets. I'm sure I'm forgetting some of those interesting nuggets, right? They go up to Pitt at the end of the season, a frisky Pitt team, and absolutely blow the doors off of them. That we have the Miami Notre Dame game from week 1 as, I guess, by the end of the season, the most important game of the season, of the regular season, perhaps?
It would seem. Yeah, it would seem.
Just because that was the game that seemed to be discussed the most at the end of the season, more than any other game. And the way that I guess last year's was Ohio State, Michigan, with that upset changing, how we talked about some of the better teams and the Big Ten and everything like that. It seems like the reverberations from that Notre Dame game, right, with Notre Dame being left out and Marcus Freeman and the Irish choosing not to play in a bowl game, just the way that the playoff rankings are looked at, it's wild to think about, but Miami was the bookend of the season, right? Because that was Labor Day weekend. I want to say, was that a Sunday night? It's either Sunday or Monday night of that opening extended weekend.
Yep. Because of the scheduling, when they played it on, I guess it was a Sunday.
Yeah.
I was able to go up and watch that game with Mama H,
right,
which I don't get to do a whole lot of, again, because we do our thing late on Saturday nights.
Mm-hmm.
When I have an opportunity to go and watch a game with her, I try to do that because we used to do that all the time. So that it was an experience. It didn't feel like it was going all that well in the first half, but then Notre Dame kind of got its act together in the second.
Sure.
And ended up being a pretty good game in the end. But that game, I think, above all, just as we look back, for sure, is one that had a lot of influence on the way this whole thing played out.
Yeah, and Mario Cristobal finally became the one he finally became in like the ring of all-time Oregon coaches by losing in the national championship game. What is more Oregon-ish than losing in the national championship game or coming up just short of winning a national championship? So, he gets like another merit badge in the Oregon Ring of Honor coaching world. It's fun. It's all good. And I'll speak for myself here. Miami proved me wrong in terms of what their eventual ceiling would become. I think I like them a good deal. I like them more than you did in August, but didn't have them breaking through in the way that they did. So, no, I really do think that the 2025 narrative arc, I think, is sort of driven by Miami's, Miami was just very gumpy with this whole season, as that's a phrase we like to use.
I was very wrong about Miami at the start of the year.
Yeah.
I really was. And I didn't think they'd beat Notre Dame. I thought it was a 4-loss team on paper. You make enough of these predictions, you're going to get some that are really wrong. That's one where I was really, really wrong. But to our credit, we had Miami over Texas A&M in the playoff. We both had Miami at a minimum plus the points over Ohio State. I think we deliberated about whether taking them outright.
Mm-hmm.
We liked Miami a great deal throughout the course of the playoffs. The problem for Cristobal was not so much him getting up for the big games, but playing down some of the ones that weren't as meaningful. And so I think we expected coming into the playoff run here that you were going to get Miami's best, even if it wasn't always pretty. You were going to get their best. You were going to get their best foot forward. And it wasn't going to be one of those deals where they just sort of wilt in the second half or they get overly conservative or anything like that. We didn't thankfully see a whole lot of that.
No.
Throughout the playoffs. And so whether that's our friend Mario growing, whether that's just Miami, playing with a full head of steam here throughout the course of the playoffs, either way, I definitely thought they acquitted themselves well. And I think it's fair to say that the U is back. The swagger is back.
No,
man.
You're not supposed to say that. You got to listen to Mario Cristobal on this, right? You can't bring something back, right? You establish something new. So every time somebody asks him that, and I actually like that tact from him, because you're never going to be able to succeed in saying like the U is back because they're wearing the military pants and stuff like that, and having the Greg Olson rap with his team. Like you're never going to be able to resurrect that. But a new era of fulfilling expectations, I think, has begun. What's your next item?
Let's talk about Notre Dame.
Okay. So give me the Notre Dame headline here, right? It's Notre Dame opts out. Is that the headline? That you can't tell the 2025 season?
I don't want it to be this.
Okay.
But I have to put on my hat as an unbiased verballer for a second. And I have to think through that lens of, if we are talking about Notre Dame, what is the thing about Notre Dame that people are going to remember from 2025?
So maybe Notre Dame does too much of its own thing.
Well, it's a question of, will people remember Notre Dame for having a good season?
Okay.
Bringing CJ Carr into the fold, Jeremiah Love being a Heisman contender. Will they remember that? Or will they remember the way things ended? And I think overwhelmingly, if I were to ask a focus group what their thoughts are, it would be how things ended. It would be Notre Dame being left out. And honestly, until Pete Bevacqua went on his little media blitz, I think Notre Dame had a lot of support out there among just the general college football fan base, right?
Yeah.
They were told for however many weeks, 5 weeks, that they were in until suddenly they weren't. I am not necessarily arguing with that logic to put Miami ahead of Notre Dame because Miami beat Notre Dame. That's already been established. But then the way that Notre Dame handled it after the fact, opting out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Pete Bevacqua taking issue with the ACC, doing podcast interviews, going on with Dan Patrick. Who knows which other shows he went on? I've lost track of them by now. And then it just sort of died.
Yeah.
I don't know where Pete Bevacqua is at this point. But Pete Bevacqua had a very active 72-hour run there where he was saying all sorts of things that seemed to rankle the college football fan base as a whole.
Yeah.
I think that is what people will remember. And I do think, just knowing college football fans the way we do, There are a great number of people who listen to this show and those who don't, who took great joy in watching Pete Bavacqua and watching Notre Dame be left out. I was not one of those people.
Right.
But I think if we are trying to be accurate and represent this season, that is something that people will talk about moving forward. The way that Notre Dame handled the end of the season being left out and then coming across in a way that, let's be honest, you might be with Notre Dame, you might not, but it's hard to deny that at least on some level that looked like sour grapes.
Can I politely disagree?
Please.
Okay, so I speak to a Notre Dame fan many times a week on this show. So I feel like I have a good understanding of where at least one Notre Dame fan's head is. And then I take what I hear from you and I try to listen and go out and see what people are saying about the Irish as it relates to the college football season. I think the thing about, and I just said this, I think the thing about Notre Dame that rings true to me, and this is moving forward too, is Notre Dame isn't being left behind, but Notre Dame seems to be more and more fading into the background of the sport during the season. And because we've become so conference-centric, because we're talking about, okay, the SEC adds these teams, the Big Ten adds these teams. Texas made the title game in year one, and Oregon won the Big Ten title, and we have the SMU's competing for the ACC title in year one, and now Texas Tech is the new alpha in the Big 12. Like, we have all of these conference-type narratives. And forget even Notre Dame's sweetheart type deal for getting into the playoff if they finish in the top 12, no matter what. That starts, I think, this fall. Notre Dame playing a schedule that has them playing immediately interesting games against Texas A&M and Miami, and then fading into the quasi ACC, but they'll play Boise and they'll play Navy and Stanford, and USC was, I think, the blip. I think, to me, and that's how I think people reacted during the playoff conversations, was just you get a lot of join a conference, blah, blah, blah. But it's more people just seem like they hadn't watched Notre Dame this season. Like, Notre Dame's schedule, they were uninteresting, which is good for them, right? Because they were just throttling teams and taking care of business. So you weren't flipping over to see a random tight Notre Dame NC State game or something. But because they didn't have any upset alerts and because they didn't play anyone of real consequence outside of USC after those first two games, right? That there wasn't this is one of the 7 big games this week. It's Notre Dame so-and-so. That didn't happen often, if at all. So that to me was the Notre Dame thing, that Notre Dame in this mega conference era is still trying to find out how to pop to non-Notre Dame people.
I think that's a really good point.
I don't know. Yeah.
To the exercise here, I don't know if that's, I don't think.
Oh, now they're not playing USC either.
Right. Well, this year they're not. But
right.
I don't think Notre Dame feeling relatively anonymous for the vast majority of its schedule is something that's going to resonate as part of an exercise like this. And if we're doing a retrospective and talking about what popped for you, people will be drawn to what happened at the end of the season. But I think the broader narrative around Notre Dame football and its place in all of this, and I've never really been a join a conference guy. I would prefer to see them in a conference, but I don't think that's the strongest argument you can make against Notre Dame for keeping them out of things. But I do understand the point of, if you're out of sight, in a sense, you're kind of out of mind.
I agree.
And given the way that the schedule worked out and the way that the season worked out, there were other narratives that I think bubbled to the surface much more so than Notre Dame when they were playing the likes of, Navy.
It's also this is a sport that, look, everybody's quick to say this team is a fraud. They haven't played anybody. This team is you can do that all day and never make any progress in having a meaningful conversation. But I think so much of this sport is still dependent on the company you keep. And when we talk about an LSU Florida game, or we talk about an Oregon Indiana game and a rematch of Oregon Indiana, or we talk about Ohio State Michigan, and we talk about Miami Clemson, or whatever huge Miami Florida State, if Florida State's pretty good, and that Notre Dame is now not playing USC, at least this year, or for however long. And I think it's fair to like bundle narratives together. Be like, oh man, this team lost to this team last year. Like, can BYU get over the hump and beat Texas Tech after losing to like the company Notre Dame keeps is with itself. And that becomes trickier and trickier when everybody else is bundling, good or not. That, I don't know. It feels like Notre Dame is sort of on its own island yelling for people to come play at their beach. I don't know.
Now, the other side of this, I think for some, and we do need to move on.
Yeah, I understand.
But the whole, I think, thing around the Notre Dame USC rivalry being canceled could probably be its own talking point.
Sure.
Totally separate from Notre Dame and just like taken in a vacuum as a thing that I think people remember. But I think a lot of that blame tends to fall a little bit more on the USC
It
side.
does. And right? I think fairly so, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's another sort of related tentacle, which maybe we can dive into at some point. But that's my spiel on Notre Dame. The way the season ended to me on a whole bunch of different levels, from first being left out to then opting out. There's a whole spectrum of emotions and I think fan sentiment that surrounded that. So with that being said, why don't you go next? What do you got for me?
I have general shirtlessness. So you have Oklahoma State fans as a section, and it's spreading, or as a row, and then as a couple rows, then as a section. They're so despondent and bored with the end of the Mike Gundy era that they start taking off their shirt en masse. And okay, that's cool. I appreciate that.
I remember before one of our midnight streams, somebody sending that to us.
Yeah.
And then seeing it happen again. It happened a couple weeks in a row. I'm curious
to
see if it
to other schools.
Yeah, it spread to other schools. I'm curious to see if it is a thing this coming season or not. But just one of those goofy things around college football that for whatever reason it gets started. Like most of the traditions in college football, somebody had an idea, gets started by accident. For whatever reason, it catches on. And that was one of those low key like Twitter moments that seemed to pop towards the end of the season.
I'm trying to think right now. So the relatedness of this all, that's not a word, I don't believe. So you have Pat McAfee taking off his shirt on game day. You have Pat McAfee and Dan Lanning I don't know if Pat McAfee has done it independently of the Dan Lanning pre-Indiana Part 1 game, but Lanning and McAfee both take off their shirt. Lanning, a separate time, takes off his shirt and jumps into a pool with a high-level defensive end, edge rushing commit, only for that recruit to go home, talk to his parents, decommit, commit, and then sign with Texas.
Right.
By the way, I share an alma mater with that commit. He went to Sierra Canyon as well. I went to Sierra Canyon Elementary and Middle School before it was like a big thing that it is now.
Do you have commitment issues as well?
My commitment, I'm overcommitted, Ty. I'm too committed. I'm too locked in.
Continue. Please continue.
And I think it was regrettable. I think there was a good amount of regret. I don't think Dan Lanning's jumping in a pool as a kid commits to Oregon again. And the other thing I thought about with this is how many major college football coaches have you personally, or have we all seen without their shirts?
Oh, well,
I think we've seen Lanning. We've seen Bielema.
Yep.
We've seen Jim Harbaugh, right, at a satellite camp, right?
Yep.
I want to say we've seen Coach O. Coach O.
Oh, definitely. I mean, he did that recently at a wedding, didn't he?
I want to say yes. I think we've seen Steve Spurrier multiple times without his shirt on. Yep, he has. I've seen a bunch of these pictures. Yep. He did a commercial. He did a Dr. Pepper commercial without a shirt on and like a cold tub. Which other coaches have we seen without a shirt on? If any.
We've
seen
prepared
most
for
of
this
Biff
level of
Poggi.
research, but
I know.
Yeah.
I know that there is a video that exists of Kirby Smart running on the beach, like racing his son. I don't remember if there was areola in that video or not. I don't specifically remember.
Okay.
But I'm trying to think, are there any other coaches who have been snapped shirtless
I'm sure.
in the solid verbal era that we're leaving out?
I'm certain. I'm certain there must be. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
I'm trying
certain
to
there have to be.
I mean, I said we've seen a lot of Biff Poggi, but not the full shirtless. I don't believe. I think the gold standard is either Jim Harbaugh with like his farmer's tan in Georgia, or wherever that picture was taken, or Brett Bielema.
It's Bielema.
I think it's probably Bielema, but I'm trying to index all of the head coaches we've seen without a
So
shirt
now
on.
let me ask you a question here.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of making a request to split off a part of this into its own conversation. Actually, I'm going to demand it. And that is Dan Lanning. I feel like this is the year that we all sort of understood as a college football public that Dan Lanning is kind of a psychopath.
Yeah.
And I am thinking specifically of that interview after the Penn State win.
Sorry, we've seen Lane Kiffin without his shirt, obviously, with hot yoga. Continue.
But Dan Lanning, in that interview that he gave after beating after beating Penn State,
Yeah.
was something that was burned into like my brain on a level that I will never forget. Because the immediate thought was, dude, this guy's on something. I don't know what he is on, but he is on something.
Just a lot of liquid IV, Ty. Just a lot of liquid IV.
But then it didn't stop. And I think I tweeted it out at some point. I forget which playoff game it was. Maybe it was the semifinal.
Yeah.
Where he's walking out yelling, "Pound of flesh."
Oh, yeah.
Pound of flesh.
Yeah.
All of these coaches.
I think it was the Texas Tech game. Yeah.
To Tech it. All of these coaches are kind of nuts. You got to be to do this job at a high level. You just have to. That's just where we're at. And I don't know if it's ever been otherwise. Like, you always have to be a little bit crazy to do this type of job. He seems like he might be the craziest. Mm-hmm. And it feels to me like even though we kind of knew it, this was the year that we really saw it.
Yeah. Well, it was the like after the Penn State game,
yeah,
right. Just like getting that oxygen in. Yeah, we've seen that, like the bulging eyes. I have an important. Do you want to do a breaking news for me? I don't want to put you on the spot, soundboard wise.
Do you want me to? Oh, you want me to play it?
Yes, please.
Is this actual breaking news or is this just
it's show breaking news
interjection?
Our friend Tom Fornelli in 2015. Topless college football coach power rankings. Who wore nothing best? Okay. We've got a Gus Malzahn.
Okay.
Looks fine in his Tulsa time, posing on the beach with maybe a fan. We've got Harbaugh in there. Obviously, we've left out Mark Richt doing his the dive off of the platform at Georgia. His annual tradition. We've got Les Miles on a boat with what looks like fans or family. We've got Kirk Ferentz in board shorts.
Whoa.
I don't know the context of this. It looks like maybe it's some kind of like charity pool jump kind of thing.
Now, there is no way that Kirk Ferentz can have any kind of tan. He has got to be as pasty white as imaginable.
Let me tell you something.
Iowa, throughout the season, I don't think he gets out much. We know he doesn't get out much. We've talked to him.
Better than you'd think.
Yeah?
Better than you'd think.
Spray tan?
No. Just not full, like, starched white.
Okay.
We've got Dan Mullen laying out with a woman. Maybe it's his wife. I'm not sure who this is. Larry Fedora, absolutely yoked.
Oh, I remember that.
You remember that?
I do. I do
this
remember
is from
that one.
2015. We've got Spurrier. We've got Cliff Kingsbury, if you remember, with a couple of women. Obviously recent former player. Brett Bielema checks in at number 1 in the rankings. So we're on the same page here. So and Gundy, right? Gundy ripped off his shirt. I want to say at like some sort of pep rally or something in the college arena, in the basketball arena. So more than you'd think. But yeah, I think Bielema still.
There are people absolutely driving off the road at this conversation.
I'm telling you.
That. No, it's cool. It's cool.
I want to be thorough. Next, what defines?
Well, I'm putting as, let's see, that was 8, 9, 10 as our 11th thing.
Okay.
I've got Dan Lanning is nuts.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it there as an 11.
Yeah.
Now you're up again. Give me another one, or do you want me to go?
For you. I think you should go.
Cody Campbell and Texas Tech.
Okay.
You could wrap a whole bunch of stuff up into a nice little Texas Tech extravaganza here.
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech had the best defensive line that money could buy. And for a while this season, they throttled everybody. Everybody. I don't think there is any way you can look at this version of Texas Tech, the season that they had, and come away feeling all that disappointed. This was a good team. They won the Big 12 in resounding fashion. They smoked BYU twice. Clearly, they had a defense. It did not work out for them to go deeper into the playoff. We will see if they can correct that. We know that they're trying. Be interesting to see what happens in 2026. But there was that whole element that we have spoken to time and again on this show.
Which, by the way, Texas Tech fans all right now are collectively sounding like Sideshow Bob stepping on the rake. Like,
well, exactly. And that's exactly what my point was going to be.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there was just this misinterpretation of what we meant when we talked about Texas Tech, and we brought this up. This is important context to mention about Texas Tech.
Yeah.
It does not mean that they do not deserve it. It does not mean we are speaking about the Red Raiders in some sort of negative capacity.
Right.
This is the way the game is now.
Yeah.
This is what you got to do if you want to play at the highest level. Look at the 4 teams that made the college football playoff semifinal. Look at the team that won. You got to be good in the portal. You got to be willing to pay. You got to have an eye for talent. You got to be aggressive. Texas Tech is doing all of those things. So to speak of how they handled the portal, paying players, attracting talent, what they've done so far this cycle,
yeah,
they are very much ahead of their peers in many ways, all of which I think are positive. But that does not mean we can't talk about it, because before this year, Texas Tech was not like a consistently ranked college football team. For all the talk about Indiana kind of coming out of nowhere with
16 years finishing unranked. Yeah.
For all the talk about Cignetti rising up out of nowhere, bringing this program from the ashes to national prominence, Texas Tech is very much part of that conversation as well because of what they did in the portal.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, there's the Cody Campbell commercial thing. There's us making fun of the goatee. There's like that whole other component to it that I think makes it really worthwhile to discuss on a show like this. But we cannot go any further without mentioning the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They were a huge part of the story in 2025.
No, and look, you can use the word emerge, I think, really accurately when you say like they emerged as like the team and the team moving forward with how aggressively they are going to recruit and hit the portal and how well of a job Joey McGuire did coaching this team and keeping everybody together and making the run that they did, winning the Big 12 and getting a bye before losing to Oregon. Look, the fact of the matter is, in that Oregon loss, the one unit that was far and away the unit keeping them in that game was the defensive line and defensive front, more broadly speaking. But I think the line more than anything, when you look at, I think it was Lee Hunter, the big nose tackle, defensive tackle inside, disrupting everything on the inside of the Oregon offensive line, getting in Dante Moore's head. That was the unit, and that was the new unit that was brought in, and just an enormous raging success of a season for Texas Tech, and the breakthrough, and in a wide open conference, seemingly not so wide open anymore, it seems, with the talent I think Texas Tech is going to continue to recruit and transfer in. I still don't hate Cody Arabia. I still don't hate that nickname. If you want to go Kotar, I listen.
Kotar is better.
You like Kotar better than Cody Arabia?
I do. Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, anything quicker is going to be more effective, right? That you can just hit Kotar.
I like Kotar, yeah.
Look, does it mean that Mark Cuban isn't paying whatever dozens of millions of dollars he is in donations to Indiana to keep this train rolling? No, it doesn't change anything with Indiana. Does it change anything with Oregon and Phil Knight? No, it doesn't. But we didn't know Cody Campbell's name 2 years ago. And so that's the emergence as well. And, the big new facility and that the aggression, you love to see aggression in this era. It's not the most charming thing, and I say that about Oregon too. I don't love it. I like it when teams are able to plug holes or whatever in the portal, but completely overhauling a roster, I don't know. There's something a little bit cold about it all. And it not necessarily true about Texas Tech. Overhauled the defensive line, brought in a new coordinator. But I don't know how you tell the story of 2025 without saying like, oh man, Texas Tech has made a move. Yeah. And they did big work, and they were super fun to watch on defense especially. And offense is TBD after what, they look like finishing the year. But, they're bringing in probably a more successful quarterback in Brendan Sorsby, and the future is bright.
You're up next. We've got 12 things thus far in this episode. We did Miami. Yes. We did Notre Dame. Shirtlessness as a offshoot of that. I did Dan Lanning is nuts, and now Cody Campbell. So we're up to 12. We've got 5 more to go here before we let the fine people go.
I'm going to go all things Diego Pavia.
Yeah.
All right. So the season is Diego Pavia coming back after junior college rule is changed up a little bit, and he is eligible. He has a breakthrough season in 2024, beating Alabama the way that they do, helping to transform along with, Tim Beck and Jerry Kill and a bunch of players that came over from New Mexico State, transforming Vanderbilt into something very fun in the SEC and in college football. 2025 was more of that, and it was more wins and, closer to even getting, with the potential comeback against Texas and acquitting themselves once again, but in a loss against Alabama and, beating Tennessee. They took a step forward. Diego Pavia, good and bad. I guess you have Johnny Manziel on the sideline of the Texas game, right. Wearing a Diego Pavia jersey. You have the Instagram posts after not winning the Heisman, Vanderbilt getting close to, but not making the playoff, and forgetting whatever you think of Diego Pavia's public persona after the Heisman. It's hard to find somebody who is purely more fun to watch that had a physical disadvantage of, I guess he just measured in at 5'9" and 7/8 for Correct. The, I don't know, it was the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Game or something like that. To just, I don't know, the full Diego Pavia experience at a place like Vanderbilt, of all places, like this old Southern money, a New Mexico State transfer after military school. I don't know, it just doesn't happen like this in other sports. And if it does, it happens for 3 weeks, right? Linsanity or something. Whereas we got this for 2 years. Well, really 3-4 years if you could go back to his time with the Aggies. I don't know. The Diego Pavia is coming to your city, and he's going to do everything to make your life miserable, running, throwing, whatever. I don't know. I love the entirety of it all.
Well, college football, college sports in general can be defined by having one or two standout performers that drive the bus.
Yeah.
And we've seen that more times than I could count. You got one good player, and that's good enough to take you to new heights. But what I think was different about this one, this is Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, much the way we talk about Indiana being this also ran for a doormat for an eternity, Vandy's never really been good. Had their moments here and there, but this has not been a program that has sustained success, and certainly not in the SEC. It's not one of the teams that we think about in the SEC as being a contender for much of anything. So for a guy who is shorter in stature, relatively speaking, to go to the SEC at a program that, relatively speaking, has been horrible.
Yeah.
And basically ignite this new exciting age of Commodore football where they're getting 5-star quarterbacks. Clark Lee is being re-upped. They are paying guys. They are building a nucleus. They are building a program. He has very much ushered in a new era. Remember, before Pavia, Clark Lee was kind of on the hot seat.
Agree.
How quickly things change because of this one guy. And I think, obviously, there's more that goes into it, but Diego Pavia was very much the mascot for what Vanderbilt is now trying to build under Clark Lee. And Clark Lee owes a lot to Diego Pavia and the excitement he was able to usher.
Jerry Kill and all those guys who came in, yeah.
And I can only speak to our verballerhood which I read the Discord chats. I know what people have to say. Even though Vanderbilt was no longer kind of the perennial underdog or a good team
of
this
course.
past year, people still treated Vandy like an underdog. People are still very smitten by the fact that Vanderbilt has gotten to this point now where they're actually going to play in some of these high leverage games, potentially knock off a team. They were right there on the fringes of the playoff conversation.
They were.
In the end. So I know I speak for our verballerhood when I say that Vandy was a very popular team to root for. Diego Pavia obviously was sort of carrying the torch for all that. And I'm with you, man. Pavia's thing number 13 is a really important thing that we needed to mention.
So Vandy finished with the number 2 points per drive scored offense in America, barely behind North Texas, playing an SEC schedule, and I believe who they play in the non-conference. I want to say they played Virginia Tech. So it's super impressive what they did. What's your next item?
You set me up, Iceman.
Yes.
Drew Mestemaker.
Okay.
Drew Mestemaker and North Texas. Maybe not a household name of a program or a household name of a quarterback, but his story is remarkable. He is being paid handsomely now as he makes the move north up to Oklahoma State and Stillwater to follow his coach, Eric Morris, who took the job with the Pokes. But Drew Mestemaker's story is kind of cool. For him to kind of burst onto the scene, not having a whole lot of experience, wildly under-recruited, which, by the way, is a hallmark of any Eric Morris-led offense or program or anything. He's been very good at spotting these guys that are under-recruited that he thinks can pop.
He's
Mestemaker was one of them.
It was Cam Ward and Baker Mayfield, I want to say, during his time at Wazoo, and then before that with Baker Mayfield's recruitment at, I want to say, Texas Tech. Yeah.
So I am excited. I think Mestemaker will be very much a talking point now as we go into 2026, and Morris was able to bring some other key contributors with him as he made the move north. But I think what North Texas did in a very short amount of time on the back of this exciting quarterback and a very exciting running back too, who should not go unmentioned here. But the Drew Mestemaker story to me was damn cool. And I feel like if we're being honest about just the lay of the land around college football and specifically the G5, North Texas was in that playoff conversation too, due in no small part because of Drew Mestemaker and what he did this season.
I want to say Caleb Hawkins and Wyatt Young both committed to Oklahoma State as well, following Eric Morris and Drew Mestemaker. Incredible story. I mean, this is a North Texas program that has had extremely down seasons relatively recently. The Seth Luttrell era ended not super well. Obviously, neither did the Dan McCarney era. Like, it's a program that should always have competitive teams given their location and given the opportunity for players from the state and their ability to transfer home and play in Denton. It was a great story. It was a super fun. Even the losses were fun not for North Texas fans, but the entirety of Drew Mestemaker not even playing in high school, being a high school backup and walking on at North Texas and exploding and having huge offers and opting to follow Eric Morris to Oklahoma State. I think it's a huge story. You're right.
You're up. What do we got next?
Okay, the secret gumpiness. I mean, it's really two West Coast teams, and I had said Wazoo before because they had almost beaten a couple of different playoff or playoff-ish teams in, I want to say, Virginia, Ole Miss, and James Madison. I want to talk to you about the entirety of the UCLA experience in 2025, okay? So it starts with bringing back a coach who really struggled in year one, but finished, I think, more positively, taking the story of the spring in as their new starting quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, right, from Tennessee, coming back home to Southern California and taking over the starting job at UCLA. Their season, starting with a loss to Utah, get absolutely shelled by Utah. What happens with Utah's season? They're good. They have a new quarterback, new coordinator. Their coach doesn't retire, but steps down and gets an even bigger job, right? So Utah's suddenly very newsy. UNLV, year one of Dan Mullen, they end up in, the Mountain West title game,
right?
Which we might have a second to get to in a moment. New Mexico, huge story in the Mountain West with Jason Eck beating UCLA, getting their head coach fired. Deshaun Foster is out after an 0-3 start. They go to Northwestern, who proceeds to beat UCLA and eventually hire recent UCLA head coach Chip Kelly as their new offensive coordinator. They beat Penn State, starting the train rolling to get James Franklin fired. And that's, by the way, they beat Penn State in Westwood, and that was with Drew Aller. An ugly, ugly performance from Penn State in a letdown spot. They beat Michigan State down, who fires their head coach eventually before hiring Northwestern's recent fired coach and Pat Fitzgerald. Maryland decides to hang on to Mike Loxley. That's not exactly crazy exciting. Indiana wins the national championship. Matt Rule might take the Penn State job, might not take the Penn State job. Dylan Raiola transfers. Nebraska is just all over the place. Ohio State's the number one team in the country, eventually loses in the playoff. Washington might lose their starting quarterback to the portal for seemingly no reason, but then he decides to return, and then they lose to their rival in USC, who had a weird season and was very gumpy, and just hired Gary Patterson to be their defensive coordinator. UCLA has been a part of it. I don't know. Yeah. There was just something to that season that, and Tim Skipper did pretty well, and then they hire a playoff coach in James Madison's Bob Chesney. All over the place.
Jerry Neuheisel.
And Jerry Neuheisel.
That beautiful mane, that Targaryen hair that he had, I thought for a moment captured the imagination of the college football universe.
Yeah.
He was a very, very popular name there for a good 4 or 5 week stretch. Where did I see he move to? Is he coming to Northwestern now?
I think Jerry Neuheisel is now local to me. He followed Chip and is going to be at Northwestern. And by the way, UCLA also, I think, announced that they're no longer going to play in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all over the place with UCLA. It's great.
Well, I'll be honest with you. UCLA needs it. They need something of a Control-Alt-Delete twice to get this thing back on the rails, because it's been a minute since it felt stable at UNLV. And hopefully Bobby Chesney can do it.
And didn't Bill Simmons, wasn't Bill Simmons part of the selling committee to Bob Chesney to bring him to LA because Bill Simmons really liked what he did at Holy Cross? I think that was part of it. Bill Simmons, I think, called up Bob Chesney. He was like, you should come to UCLA. It's great out here. That was part of the recruitment of Bob Chesney, was Bill Simmons calling him up to convince him to come to LA.
Let's put it this way. When you're doing an exercise like this, you're looking for things that were influential, either for the entirety of the season, for a few weeks, or just a moment that captured imagination. Jerry Neuheisel and UNLV, both before the season, as you mentioned with Nico, during the season with the UCLA, excuse me, the firing of the coach, the way things kind of went back on the rails, they ended up being a half decent program in the very end. That, to me, it was nothing if not influential. So
they basically got James Franklin fired. It was the Northwestern thing was like the nail in the coffin, but they purchased the coffin after the UCLA game.
That's right.
And that's right. It was the UCLA shouldn't be insulted, but it's also the Penn State lost to UCLA. How could you lose to a team like UCLA? We might need to have a conversation. So they got that rolling as well. So wild. What do you have?
I'm going John Mateer next.
Okay.
John Mateer. John Mateer is going to be back again this year, which would be good. It would be good for Oklahoma, of course. See if they can get their offense back on track. But so much of the conversation in the buildup to the 25 season was Oklahoma getting a package deal. John Mateer, his coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, coming down from Wazoo. Mm-hmm. We made a video at one point that did really, really well. It was just a clip from our episodes, but it was you talking about how John Mateer had sort of very quickly achieved folk hero status.
Oh, maybe after the Michigan game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, of course, John Mateer had his own roller coaster this season. He had the thumb injury. He had surgery. He came back from it very quickly, played in the Red River game, played great. But he very much was the key cog on that offense. The combination between him and Isaiah Satania is, by and large, outside of their defense, what got them into the playoff to begin with. And they didn't win the game.
You can't say by and large and then outside of the one much bigger reason.
Well, I'm saying outside of the defense, John Mateer and what he was able to do, mainly with his legs, but then At times, when he had a wide open Isaiah Satania, they were able to use that for big plays. But that was sort of the catalyst on offense. Nobody listening to this is going to be confused into thinking that Oklahoma was some sort of juggernaut on offense. But John Mateer and his ability to just make it work, draw it up in the dirt. There was a little bit of Baker Mayfield in the game. I think that's fair to say, certainly as a runner.
Yeah.
So I think his ability to kind of come down to Norman, immediately inject some more excitement into that program. There was a lot of anticipation before he got there. We can debate whether or not he lived up to the hype, but I do think just this constant tracking of Mateer. Will he play? Won't he play?
Oh, the thumb
what
stuff,
can he do? What can he do in game that's going to shake things up? We know he's a bit of an improviser back there. The entire John Mateer experience needs to be mentioned as part of this conversation.
I agree. There was something very funny about the Oklahoma discourse this season, that Oklahoma as a fan base, again, by and large, is used to complaining about defense. Is used to saying like, well, yeah, we can score points, but who are we stopping, man? And I was probably came to a head against, was it LSU in the 2019 season playoff game where they got like 50 points dropped on them in the first half. Now Oklahoma fans, it seems, are using, like, when somebody says something nice about Oklahoma, I think the savvier Oklahoma fans start responses with, no, for sure, but like, it's cool that like you're in the playoff conversation. No, for sure, it's cool we're in the playoff conversation, but we're scoring like 16 points a game. And that was, to me, part of the John Mateer experience and part of the Ben Arbuckle experience and part of the personnel on hand experience of Oklahoma football was the no for sure but. Like with the 5% win expectancy over Alabama the first time, going up 17-0 in the playoff game. There was something very fun about John Mateer, a.k.a. Thumb and Thumber. But we're going to need to see... Thank you. That was on the fly, Ty. We're going to need to see a step forward so we don't have to talk about it as a folk hero, because folk hero sort of implies like, yeah, didn't have all the tools available to him, but managed to get the princess out of the castle. Now we're just like, let's see how he does with a sword. Let's see if he has an offense available to him and if he is able to evolve into the quarterback of a, above average offense. That would be nice.
I have our final item here. I'm gonna call this one out.
Okay.
Then I think we've got a long list here. If we want to
others receiving votes.
Yeah,
yes.
If we want to do others receiving votes quickly, we can do that. Number 17 is just broadly tiebreakers.
I like this.
Tiebreakers. And there are two ends of the spectrum. We could go the ACC route, which is putting Duke in the ACC title game. 5-loss Duke winning your ACC championship with a quarterback who is now headed to Miami, I think officially. There's that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is what happened in the Mountain West, where we had a 4-way tiebreaker. They couldn't break the tie. Eventually, our friend Bill Connolly and his SP Plus rankings were part of the ensemble of other ranking systems that were used to eventually give a nod to both UNLV and Boise State to go to the Mountain West title game. Boise State won 38-20.
Right.
Tiebreakers in this new world order of college football, where every conference seemingly has a gajillion teams, are very important. It is very important to understand how they work. It is very important to understand the nuances of them. Once you understand the nuances, it sort of makes the whole thing make a little bit more sense.
Right.
But truly, you need a website. You need somebody who put in the work to code this thing out, give you the option to select all the little boxes to figure out who won and who lost, and then spit out what exactly would be the end result, who would get in and who wouldn't. It is complicated, but tiebreakers have never been more important in college football, and that absolutely was the case this year.
Yeah, look, with having Duke, Virginia, as two teams clearly ranked below an ACC team in Miami, and I'm sure the ACC is going to continue to think about how its tiebreakers work. I just love that we got to the point where our friend Bill Connolly had to weigh in with his, predictive SP Plus platform to say like, well, here's where it all comes down with regard to UNLV and what was it? San Diego State, UNLV, Boise State, and New Mexico.
Right.
Nobody's taking my idea to just fly all the coaches to a giant Olympic-sized pool. We do some kind of medley, and
Like
that's
a
how we
Revenge of
decide
the
it.
Nerds style thing? Yeah.
Yeah, we get Jason Eck doing breaststroke and backstroke and everything like that. We go from there. Like, if we're going to be ridiculous about this, I think we should go in that direction. The tiebreakers were a major. By the way, this is not related, but kind of related. We had the College Football Playoff Committee introduce like new terminology to decide, because they basically said Notre Dame is better and has done more than Miami since that game. And we're only using the head-to-head as a tiebreaker once they find themselves in the same, I forget the exact word. It was like in the same bundle.
Yeah.
Right? The same cluster. Was that the word that they used? I forget what it was.
I don't know. Speaking of clusters, that's
And they
what
just
this
like,
was. Yeah.
they just spoke about it as if it's something that we had all agreed upon was a real way of talking about it. Like, what?
Of course.
Who's in what
Everybody
cluster?
knows about this.
Is a
Of
cluster
course.
different from a bundle? It was so good that they're like, all right, here's what we're doing. Obviously, this has all been laid out in all of the coursework and material we passed out. Like the same cluster, the same bundle. Get out of here. I loved it so much because I hated it so much. I don't know. It was great.
Tiebreakers. Tiebreakers are very important now. And it wasn't just
Head-to-head
those-
doesn't matter until they're pushed up against each other.
until they're back to back and belly to belly.
Right. It was so good.
Yeah. Tiebreakers.
Mm-hmm.
Tiebreakers, broadly speaking, very, very important. It wasn't just those two conferences. We were talking about it. I felt like the entire back half of the season.
Yeah.
And we weren't the only ones. If you went online and read, I mean, everybody was talking through tiebreaker scenarios, be it in the SEC or even in the Big 10, the Big 12. Certainly the Big 12 is not immune to this either.
By the way, it had to happen, but with regard to the Mountain West was incredible this year. The Mountain West was quietly one of the most entertaining conferences in the sport, right? Boise State has a slow start. New Mexico, again, another team that emerges. San Diego State was awesome after some down years. UNLV in year one after Barry Odom. Fresno State with a new coach. Hawaii wins 9 games. There was a ton of fun in this conference.
No, I couldn't agree more. And by the way, Dan, speaking of conferences and speaking of stories, maybe that will be first and foremost in 2026. The Pac-12 is back, baby.
Pac-12 is
Pac-12
back.
is
Speaking
back.
of the Mountain West. They put a new sticker on top of the old sticker.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are 17 things that made 2025 unique. We've got a long list of other things, Dan. Why don't you talk through some that jump out to you?
I have, from the top, we have Brent Pry being hired back by Virginia Tech. It wasn't defining the season, but it was unique enough where you're just like, they're doing what now? With whom? Who's going to be the defense? Like that guy? Okay. And like on a certain level, you understand it, but you're just like, that's different.
Let me ask you this, though.
Yeah. On
the coaching thing, we did not mention Sharon Moore in Michigan.
We didn't, and we probably could have bundled that in somewhere or clustered
We probably could have.
Yeah.
But, when I think of the season,
right,
this was like an extracurricular, no pun intended, but like
Yeah.
extracurricular thing after the season, right? This wasn't necessarily how Michigan played, how Michigan performed. I mean, we can obviously talk about Sharon Moore, whether or not he was even qualified for that job to begin with. But Sharon Moore in the long December of Michigan football, to me, is not necessarily I look at as something that defined the season as a whole. It is certainly a talking point. If anything, I think it's going to define more of the 2026 season as we look forward. But the way that all went down, I mean, it was a catastrophe. It was a horrible experience there for a couple of weeks. I like Kyle Whittingham. I hope he's able to right that ship. But I don't want to put too much emphasis on that. It was a major breaking news story. It was a huge deal here. But if I think back to the season itself, the college football part of it that we all know and love, that's why I didn't include Sharon Moore. And you could argue with me if you want, but that's why I did not include it.
Yeah, it wasn't the regular season. Obviously, the silly season is part of this all. And a good example of why, like, coaching carousel's never fully done. It is never fully screeching to a halt. And the timing of that was also interesting with, like, Eli Drinkwitz just became a better coach after the season ended every 2 days.
Yeah.
Kalen DeBoer became a better coach every 2 days. Like Curt Cignetti should have added $2 million to his contract every time his name came up. He should have taken every call and added $2 million. Like he should be making $24 million a season based on the number of teams who probably tried to get in on that conversation. I have down here Deion Sanders' preseason press conference announcing bladder cancer and joking about diapers. I'm always going to be a fan of Deion Sanders. I'm always going to be a fan of like his outlook and the way he carries himself. I think it's just very entertaining. But I did enjoy that he was very candid and direct and had a sense of humor about, a pretty terrible thing to happen to him. So
speaking of coaches now, another coach name that we did not include in our initial batch of 17 was Billy Napier.
Yes.
And Florida. And I think we will probably get some pushback that we did not include it here. This is less of a ranking. It's more of a list and the items that jumped out to us. I think the reason I didn't include Napier on here is because it felt like a foregone conclusion with the way that the season started that he was not going to be long for Gainesville. And specifically then after Penn State made the move on James Franklin and after we saw other moves around college football, it almost felt to me like this, like, A, yes, was foregone conclusion, but B, kind of faded into the background of things. It was just assumed that they were going to move on. They were going to go in a different direction. Florida did not play well. It didn't work out.
Well, then it became more foreground when Lane Kiffin was considering his future opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Florida opening, for sure. I thought popped a little bit more in that sense than it did early on with, early on, Florida not playing well. It seemed as though that die was cast very early, that Napier was not going to be the guy. And eventually they made the move. They went a different direction. But for me, thinking back, it's maybe Florida fans and SEC fans might feel differently, but I don't gravitate to that point the way that I would have expected when I went back and thought through what things popped to me.
Let's be clear, though. You talk about how like the die was cast and it was a foregone conclusion. It took James Franklin losing to UCLA and losing to Northwestern for the powers that be at Penn State saying to themselves, you know what, this era has probably gone on too long. Penn State, it just seems like there's a lot of internal stuff that's not going to be solved with James Franklin at the helm. Billy Napier beat Mississippi State. And then Florida was like, we're still done with you.
Yeah.
So they fired. I mean, obviously, I think it was the bye week the week after that. So they just figured the timing was such. Like, was there a number? If they beat Mississippi State by 35, would that have forced their hand to like keep him? It would have. It's kind of a wild thing, but yes, that's to the degree it was a foregone conclusion. He won a game and they fired him.
Yeah.
I would say Pete Golding getting the Ole Miss job.
Okay.
I think that's something you like, getting the Ole Miss job, at the tail end of the Lane Kiffin thing, and then immediately starting his tenure by allegedly tampering to an extreme degree with a linebacker transfer at Clemson, and being called out in a press conference by it. Right. You mentioned the Duke thing. I mean, just that they lost 5 times, including to UConn, who was totally good, and winning the ACC. I mentioned the Wazoo thing, having the close playoff losses. West Virginia bringing in 50 new dudes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dudes.
Well, and bringing back Rich Rodriguez.
And bringing back Rich Rod, yeah.
I think that's definitely something that jumps out to me. We didn't talk about Virginia, but Virginia quietly building itself into an ACC contender.
Oh, yeah.
With a good quarterback in Chandler Morris, a good defense, giving that program new life. Again, UVA, not necessarily a program we're used to talking about as being a contender for anything in college football, but that was kind of the story of the year on a couple different fronts. Tony Elliott did a really good job. Tony Elliott was another one of those names that was, kind of borderline on the hot seat. Like, where's this going here? Where's this going? It didn't start off great, but last season was definitely a bit of a revelation. So I think UVA is one of those schools that we should talk about. I mentioned earlier, nobody's going to talk about the Kennesaw State Owls, but Kennesaw State won 10 games. Kennesaw State made a coaching change. They were not good last year in their first year in 24. FBS, as you might expect. But this year, obviously, a bit of a turnaround story. They had a really, really nice year.
Are they're the top Owls, I think,
they were
of the season?
They were the top Owls.
Better than Temple? Better than Rice? I think.
How about Avery Johnson's dad and brother fighting in the parking lot
in Ireland? That was a low light. That was a long time ago, Ty.
It felt like
that was 93 degrees hotter ago where I live. Yeah, there was that. There was I mentioned the Damon Williams and then Darian Mensah thing where they signed deals that there are buyouts involved and now negotiations involving settlements with leaving their school for a new school, and in Darian Mensah's case, likely at time of recording, Miami. Yeah. I had in addition to the Kennesaw State thing, how about Delaware and Missouri State first year FBS?
I think we called that out briefly in the first episode.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely.
We had Lee Corso retired. We mentioned Paul Feinbaum flirted with the Senate run, and then had to go on a weird sullen tour on TV after the Big Ten had a good season because he built his entire personality out of these teams are good. I don't know. Anything else from the season where you're just people forget a lot of weird stuff happens during the year? Any other shirtless takes you have?
Shirtless takes? No. All right. No. I think that's it. Look, we had a bunch of people send stuff in, solidverbal@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
We're still going through all that stuff. We appreciate people's response to the episode. The response has been very, very positive. People seem to have enjoyed this. So we can add it back into the Rolodex of things that we do to put a bow on every college football season. Not to get too far out ahead of ourselves as we build towards 2026. We're still sort of digesting here from 2025. Again, though, if you got feedback, solidverbal@gmail.com. Leave a comment, be it out on YouTube, out on Spotify, anywhere you can leave a comment. We read all the comments. We'd love to hear from you, what we got right, what we got wrong, what we left out, what really did it for you as you look back on the season that was.
Yes, absolutely.
Why don't we leave it there? Covered a lot of ground here over these last 2 episodes. Again, we would encourage everybody, if you made it this far, hit follow, hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of the episodes. If you want to support Dan and I going out, and consider supporting us at verballers.com or patreon.com/solidverbal, whichever URL.
I'll pitch you on my newsletter segment offline.
Oh, that's an offline thing.
It's an offline thing, I've decided.
Okay.
I don't want people ripping off my ideas, Ty.
They're
all gold.
People never rip off our ideas.
No. That's unheard of.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, we'll catch you all next week. Enjoy your weekend. Stay solid.
Peace.